Hey Collective, it's Al, and welcome back to the channel. Today is Sunday Funday, and as usual I was going to take the day off actually, but I had taken a nap and I had this dream that came in, and when I woke up I just was chuckling at the implications behind it, so I thought I'd share it in the way that it came across. Apparently somebody has the wrong influence in their ear, and it's a divine masculine, and so to blast right on through that to help the divine feminines out there, because there's 6 pairs of y'all, to help this influence get out of your head, I'm going to speak to what's going on in a way that you will understand that something higher is asking you to get beyond this. And so what it was I was reminded of a situation that I'd once heard about a couple that I had come into contact with earlier on in my life, and they were the epitome of the perfect couple, right? And they had been talking to me about how when they first met, they had this roadblock where they just didn't find each other either appealing, or it just wasn't the right time, or whatever it was. And the more that they spoke, the more that I just started to get this impression of them, of like, how ridiculous does this all sound in retrospect, because I had met them once they had already been together, and of course it was the epitome of perfect love. It was the divine union of God representative and a male dynamic to a female, and they were perfect, right? And they had never been happier in their lives, and they were telling me all of the reasons why they had struggled in getting together. And the more I listened to them, the more I just started thinking of signs and synchronicities, because I had known them individually well, and so I knew the backstory. And I was like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that you let these other people talk you out of your happiness. Meanwhile, the signs and synchronicities were so fucking blatant that even an Eskimo papoose would have been like, these two motherfuckers belong together, right? And so I was like, didn't y'all grow up in the same town? Weren't you born in the same town? Weren't y'all even went to the same elementary school? Or didn't you go to the same school? Or didn't you end up like going down the same career paths? Or didn't you have the same obstacles? Didn't you have the exact same life path, but from different perspectives? And I'm like, but did you think that God was having fun? Did you think that the statistical probability of that happening was so common that you would have the exact same life path to each other, and then you wouldn't register that person was the one that God designed for you? And you're like, yeah, but I get what you're saying, but my friends were like really concerned. I mean, they were from the other side of the tracks, or they were, there was something taboo about it, or they're from a different religion. And so everybody was in my ear telling me how this would be really negative for me. And I'm like, how'd that work out for you? And they were like, yeah, we're not friends anymore. Do you see this happiness? This happiness is what I get when I listen to my higher guidance. And I was talking to the guy in the dream, because it was a memory, and the guy's like, when in retrospect, I'd always felt divinely guided. I'd always had an inner voice that told me what should I do and what I shouldn't do, and always drove me. And right before this came to be, when I had seen her, and I had realized that she was the one for me, and I was fighting it because of all the controversy around it, what was interesting is I stopped being able to hear my own voice, and I started to feel discombobulated and a little bit lost. And I started to become susceptible to other people's drama, and it started to build around me until I realized that it was a negative reinforcement from the divine universe telling me, hey, what the fuck do you want me to do? Give it to you in a silver platter? Wake up. This is your person. And so I started to think about how that comes across sometimes to those of us who really are divine beings that work like as catalysts for change, and bring messages to especially divine masculines and feminines and try to unite them. And one of the things I remember specifically is every now and then I get the impression that as the divine is trying to orchestrate these divine unions coming into be, that every now and then he or she must get very flustered with the situation, because people are so stubborn and they just refuse to do what the divine is trying to guide them to do. It's like the epitome of perfect happiness. Everything that they've ever wanted is this other person, but everybody else is either jealous, or they don't have that intuitive connection to the divine that was blocked in this guy's scenario. And so it was like a lot of jealousy and a lot of weird things. And you would look at look at her past, and you would go, what the hell were they jealous about? She didn't come from anything. But it was who she was. It was that she was created in romantic terms for him. And I realized that there's a whole bunch of stuff there, but I remember thinking when I was listening to this, how it reminds me of how the divine must get frustrated, because every now and then I'll be sound asleep, I kid you not. And people already think I'm a strange duck, but y'all who are divine and coming into divine union, you know what I mean. So I'll be minding my own business, sleeping, and all of a sudden I will get the impression that I get like a knock on the door of my dream, and it's the divine going, what are they doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm over here trying to do my own dreams, trying to make my own life happen. And somebody's like, yeah, you work for me. Do something. And I'm like, what the fuck you want me to do? You want me to go onto YouTube and create a whole channel dedicated to trying to get these little motherfuckers together? They're your kids. They're not listening to you. What the fuck you want me to do? Air my entire life? Make me look like the weirdo? Go out there and blah, blah, blah. And no, you had him. You do it. And all of a sudden I got like a smack across the back of my head. And then like earlier today when I was at the park, I almost tripped and killed myself and almost broke my leg. And I went, oh, well, right. So this video is going to be on signs and synchronicities. And so when you all are going through your life, and all of you who are, especially your believers, because you're divine union, so whether you are Catholic, whether you are Baptist, whether you are Episcopalian, or whether you are, I don't know, whatever the different Jewish, whatever your denomination is, whatever house you belong to, one common thing that all of us have in common is that we believe in a higher power. We all name it different names, but the one thing we all claim is that we never question God's will, and that we understand that there's no accidents in our universe, that it is a divine universe created by something much higher than we, a consciousness that does things in order to make us learn and to excel and to find our truth and our happiness. And so as we go through our lives, I find that the same people who claim they are faithful have the hardest time with getting the message. In this scenario with the two that I had the dream about, which by the way was hysterical because it was Archangel Michael and Gabriel acting it out for me, trying to make me remember the memory. And so that was really hysterical. That's what made me wake up chuckling. But anyway, that's just me telling you. But the point is, as I was thinking back to it, I was like, I've done this myself. There have been signs and synchronicities to people that I have overlooked or said no to because of other people's influence. And I was different. I, for some reason, had that inner monologue or that higher guidance that always said to me, Al, don't make us trip you. Or don't make us you haven't had the easiest time sometimes, sweetheart. Do you really want to set this tower in motion? And I'm like, no, how about a positive tower? And so I tend to do the opposite of what people tell me to, because I'm one of those people that I've learned that other people's interest is always on themselves. And for most people in our world, I find that monetary gain is most people's primary focus. They're always worried about how it will affect their bottom line or their income. And they forget that the divine doesn't give a flying fuck about that. The divine wants you and me to find our happiness. And it's always based on something that others can't see. It's something that they may not have ever experienced because they settled. They decided that money was more important, at least for my friends. They decided that money was more important, and so they always have these relationships where they're unhappy. And one of the things that it reminded me of is I have this thing where once I meet my mate, there are two things I'm going to say. I'm going to say, no lies, no divorce. That's it. And I plan on marrying my best friend. But I started to think about the signs and synchronicities about this couple, and I was thinking, well, it's kind of funny. I mean, they were born in the same town, which is already odd because there's such a big world. And they came from different religious backgrounds, but they went to the same schools. And then they had the same backgrounds, and they both came from single mothers, and then they both had a really twisted sense of humor. And of course, they didn't necessarily like each other at first. They thought that they were both she thought he was a bit of a stick in the mud, and he thought that she was a little bit out there. And I was just like, well, I can relate to that, right? And so I started to think about the fact that they then went on to lead these lives, and they both left their hometowns, and they both went and had a life. And it didn't turn out the way that they wanted, but things happened, and they both did very well for themselves, and they finally came back together again in a random way, like divine intervention, if you will, which just blasted them together. And I remember thinking about that as I was reminiscing after I realized what the two angels were acting out, and I couldn't stop laughing because I remember that I've had that situation where I too let those other people get into my head, and it never works out for me. I always end up feeling like this is it, and then I always realize that it can't be it, because the divine, that we hold so high, that we say never makes mistakes and that we believe in 100%, has gone out of their way to make someone have the exact same life path as me. What are the odds of that? It's impossible, because it's meant to be. So for you divine masculines and you divine feminines that are doing this little tango back and forth in the universe right now, stop for a second and ask yourself the question that he had asked himself, my friend. If you've ever been divinely guided and intuitive somehow and always had luck on your side, realizing that you're actually blessed, not just lucky, as you meet these people, and all these people have negative reactions to that one person, and you don't quite understand it, Do you find that your signal starts to get jammed, and that what used to be easy breezy beautiful cover girl now becomes a drag queen that had way too many drinks since the next day? If your signal is getting jammed, that's a negative influence. Doesn't matter if they're your mother, your brother, your father, your sister, whatever it is. If the divine universe literally has paired you up with someone that is so rare and unique, don't pass up your opportunity to find your true happiness. Money doesn't equal that. You can only go so far with money. And some of you, these divine masculines and feminines I'm talking to, the 6 pairs of y'all, let me say this. You have a divine calling that they will never understand. It is something that only you and the divine have worked out. Don't pass up your happiness. Because I'll say this, and this is specifically to the divine masculines, because the end of the dream is very interesting. The divine feminines, whether they're guy or girl, because you can be either gender, are not here to wait forever. They are divine human beings that souls are so pure and so made of light. They carry the word of God. They carry the inspiration to make change. They are change agents. They're not here to wait forever. And especially as things start to go now with this big event, because like we've had a couple pre-shocks, earthquakes here, and I already told you guys it's coming either tonight or tomorrow or whatnot, but that's me like being me. But I'm just saying, don't wait and lose the opportunity, because the divine's not going to waste such precious cargo as your divine feminines and make them single. At some point, the divine, from what I'm understanding, will choose his daughters and sons on that side of the equation and have them who are in alignment and ready, who've been waiting patiently and trying to be as supportive as they can, will probably have them have to make another decision. It's not anything personal. It's that you were meant to come together and live your life as one. From these unions, from these guys, girls, guys, mixtures, will come great things. But it comes in a way that's different from the status quo. So if you find yourself, and I don't know who this is to, but whoever is in your ear that is so influential that is making you question it, did you do the homework? Did they have the same life path? Because they wouldn't be giving me this example if there wasn't a reason behind it. Do they come from the same place you come from? Have they overcome what you've overcome? Did they do this? Did they do that? And if it lines up, then who the fuck is anyone else to tell you that God's wrong? That's it for today, guys. I'm going to go back to my Sunday fun day. I have a Dave Medea. That man makes me laugh. But I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to let you guys have that wonderful kind of sentiment. You divine masculines and feminines find each other, love each other, and fuck what they heard. Let them go. Let these people go. God doesn't make mistakes. And if you're a believer, then why are you listening to other people? Bye.